In the high desert country of northeast Arizona, Jerry Stark produces straight razors entirely by hand, with all parts and labor from the USA. Beginning with the raw steel blanks, first he establishes a rough draft of the spine, tang, point, and concavities of the razor before it can be given its heat treatment and tempering further down the road. Initial grinding of the spine and sides is done upon a broad, flat, coarse medium, followed by the use of a narrow curved medium for some sculpting of the tang and tail features, and finally a coarse wheel and pressure are combined to reduce the sides of the steel on the future razor by about 80%. The steps with the flat and tightly curved mediums are repeated again with a finer grit belt. Here we see the critical first step of establishing some hollow grind to the razor. After initial grinding's finished, the razor must be briefly heated to an extremely high temperature, quenched in an oil bath and allowed to cool for a day, then reheated for an extended period at a much lower temperature. This results in a steel which is hard, durable, and most importantly, flexible. We've not shown so here, but for his D2 steel razors, Jerry employs a proprietary cryogenic quenching method, freezing the razor below negative 100 degrees Fahrenheit for over 24 hours to produce a steel that has superior edge retention to the 52100 steel shown in this video, and with comfort that's just as good for most users. Remember, of course, that there's no such animal as an objective standard for what recipe and tempering process of steels feels best upon one's individual skin. There is only subjective opinions. After the razor's heat treatment and temper have been set, the processes of grinding begin anew. It is critical at this point that the razor's steel never approach the threshold used in the prior process of tempering. So Jerry uses his bare hands and dips the razor in water at any time he feels its buildup of any meaningful heat. You can see now how the razor is beginning to take upon its final shape. Following the work on the spine and tang, the first serious application after temper of the grinding wheel ensues, and then there is a laborious back and forth process. Setting to the bench stone to establish a primary edge, returning to that grinding wheel appropriately, finding the place where it needs to be thinner and making it thinner, back to the bench stone. Suffice it to say, we have greatly condensed this chunk of task, which requires a tremendous amount of patience. Thereafter, the razor will be applied to buffing wheels, the bench stones, conventional Japanese water stones, and of course strops. For his extra hollow ground models, Jerry grinds using wheels with a radius significantly narrower than the razor's width to remove metal already comfortably within the planes defined from the spine to the edge. This takes a heck of a lot of skill, but it results in a razor with much more audio communication and flex. Every razor produced has an edge thin enough to flex on demand unharmed, which is the true hallmark of straight razor quality. As you can see from these next few minutes, Jerry's scales are too entirely handmade, starting with tracing upon a large chunk of raw material and finishing with good old-fashioned buffing and sandpaper. Even the scales wedges are handmade, with uneven pressure applied during grinding of the micarta, so that it turns out, well, wedgy of course. Afterwards the scales insides are glued, the wedge placed and clamped, and finally the excess micarta is ground, sanded, and buffed away. All by hand, of course. The finished product's truly the embodiment of skilled craftsmanship, made one at a time, with enough pride in the work to assign one's only given name to the brand.